Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Not some, not half, all of them. Now, bring them all, achieve peace.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our weekly podcast, filmed and recorded and marking day 160 of the Gaza war. My name is Tal Schneider, and I'm the political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel. Each week, this podcast is produced in collaboration with the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, an organization created by the families of those abducted to Gaza during the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023. We kindly ask you, as global citizens, to use your voices and your platforms to share this episode. You can tweet it, you can put it on Facebook or elsewhere, wherever you wish. Uh, please help us spread the word and keep the hostages in the public hearts and minds. Whether it's talking to your colleagues at work, attending rallies, posting on social media, or you can even send creative ideas to the forum. Every action counts and helps those missings and the entire Israeli public. If you also would like to support the Hostage Families Forum, you can scan the barcode in the show. It is appearing right now, and we will hold it for a couple of seconds, but I can guarantee to you that at the end of the episode, we will also put it back again so you can scan it also then, or you can also go into the website of the hostages and visit the official donation page and help us fund the global advocacy efforts for this cause. Today, we are honored to be joined by Orna and Ronen Neutra.
Neutral.
Neutra, I'm sorry, the parents of Captain Omer Neutra, Zal. Omer left his comfortable and fulfilling life in New York, in Long Island, and joined the IDF in November of 2020 to serve our country, to serve Israel. Um, Before we start with the questions, it's worth noting that Orna and Ronen have just returned from a weekly community rally in their hometown of Plainview, Long Island. These rallies are part of the Run for Their Lives initiative, and they are taking place in dozens of locations all around the United States and I think even other places. So if you want to check out your local Run for Their Lives efforts, you can also visit the website and join those rallies. They are being held weekly. It's very, very important to show support for the families. And just one note before we start asking the questions, there is a new booklet coming out about the 50 hostages that are still being held in Gaza. We will send a link to that at the end of the episode, or you can look it up in the website of the hostages forum. You can download it, read it, reflect on each of the hostages. There is 49 men and 1 woman being held by the terror organization, and we are doing everything we can here in Israel to bring them back home. It's important, if you can join the efforts, it's very, very important. And do whatever you do, read about them or share it. And again, Orna and Ronen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
you, Tal.
you. And thanks for having us.
And we just going to start with some news, because you recently, I think maybe yesterday or the day before that, you just met with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What can you tell us about the meeting? What can you tell us about the latest on the efforts to bring them back home?
Yeah, so probably the fact that we're living in New York, we understood since the war started and Omer was taken that we have a special role in trying to make sure that the American administration is doing everything to support Israel and to demand and work a deal to release all the hostages. It started with the Biden administration, obviously, that was at the time, and then now we are heavily involved with conversations with the Trump administration, and we came from a week load of many meetings with some of his cabinet members, other important figures in Washington. And you're right that on Friday afternoon we met with Secretary Rubio, which was an important meeting in an important time because we just learned the day or two before that the discussions with Hamas were put on hold, that Israel withdrew their negotiation team from Qatar, that the United States took their negotiation team, and we wanted to understand how Secretary Rubio is seeing the crisis unfolds and what's his vision of the way forward.
Mhm.
Tara, I want to add that, we've been in this ordeal for 660 days today. That's a very long time. We've seen the whole administration change in Washington, but we remain, and our children and our husbands and 50 hostages remain in Gaza. And we felt that we have a role also in reminding the administration and the world that we were there exactly a year ago. And it also felt like a deal was impending. It was really tangible. And the women, the children, the elderly, the ill were supposed to come out in that deal. And it didn't happen. And the fighting continued and intensified. And in early September, 6 hostages were murdered because of that pressure. And we feel we have a role in reminding that is a risk that we're facing right now, that these hostages that have survived for 660 days are at risk every single day. And we may have to make sure that this cannot happen again.
I think what we heard from Secretary Rubio was an understanding that the partial deal is a very risky deal. And he reiterated President Trump's call to bring everybody home in a swift one deal.
I was exactly about to ask you about that because there is a huge debate going on in Israel, and maybe some of our listeners are not aware to that. The Israeli government was planning, a phase deal. So, get some of the hostages out on the first phase, and then leave the 10 people that are still alive, leave them behind. And, what about the people that were killed? Not even dealing with that yet. And I'm just, this is like before you answer, because I want to hear your opinion on that. But I just want to tell our listeners and viewers that there is around 70% of the Israeli public, according to all polls for more than a year now, they want to see an end to the war, end the war in Gaza in exchange for all 50 hostages. So this is like a consensus if you think about the polling. And what do you think about, what do you hear about, the plan to have everybody out, not, do not phase it out?
Of course, we want everyone out as soon as possible. And any other kind of deal, phase deal, is putting the families in an impossible situation where, families of the living hostages feel the need to prove how humanitarian their son, their husband, is at this point, where we know that everyone is humanitarian at this point and they all need to come out. And we also are not hearing in that phase deal that when the last hostage is going to come home. And that's our concern, the last hostage and not the next 2. So I think we have to think about how the last hostage is going to come home. And yes, Israeli society is tired. We won't go there in this conversation, but tired from the war, missing its people. We need to bring this phase into a close. It's clear that we're dealing with a fierce enemy, and we keep hearing that that enemy, is going to be there. We're always going to have to deal with that enemy. For
True.
now, there's urgency in bringing back the live hostages and also the deceased. There's a great concern that as the war continues, it will be very, very difficult. It probably is already very difficult to figure out where the hostages are and to locate them in order to bring them back. So
But
right now, Tal, like you're saying, Israeli society feels that we need to stop this war right now and bring back the hostages and kind of recompose and think, what the next steps are for Israel's security.
But what do you hear from Secretary Rubio or maybe from Steve Witkoff with respect to a one deal, with respect to the fact that the Israeli public wants to see all of them out at the same stage without those incremental steps? What do you hear from the administration about that?
I think we all heard recently, both from Steve Witkoff and from Prime Minister, and as well as from President Trump, and we heard it also from Rubio, that maybe there needs to be some rethinking. And what we try to give is encouragement, not to look at the deal that they are constructing or have been constructed even on the Biden time as a partial deal, and is really driven by the Israeli government, and rethink about it and find a better solution, a swift one. And we all know, and everybody we spoke in Washington understand, that the key to bring resolution to the Middle East, continue with American strategic goals in the Middle East, enhance the Abraham Accord, continue with normalization with more Arabic countries. It's all pending on getting the hostages first. So we call it the key for the key. The key is to get the hostages out.
All
And
of
that
them.
will lead to everything else, and things can fall in place. And I
Mhm.
know, and we appreciate everything President Trump is doing in the Middle East. We know his big goals, but nothing is going to happen. And Israel will not stop the war. And Saudi Arabia is not going into normalization with Israel or anybody else for that matter in the region if the hostages are not coming back. So that should be the most urgent, the most immediate, the most swift deal that they should be looking for. And I think we may be heading into some rethinking phase, and
Rethinking.
hopefully to some changes in strategies.
And
Because let's
maybe,
face it, it hasn't
maybe,
worked. It hasn't worked. We've been stuck since the 33 hostages released when President Trump just got inaugurated, and then the one release of Idan Alexander that was not in exchange for anything. That was
right.
just out of respect to President Trump that Hamas tried to show. Since then, there hasn't been any release. And the 20 hostages that are considered alive are in dire condition. And like Ornan said, they can die any day. And we just afraid of the notion that the Israeli IDF will get closer by mistake, and as a result, some of those hostages will get executed. This is a nightmare of the families,
And
and
it
we don't.
happened. It happened before.
It
Yes, it
happened a
happened.
year ago, and we don't want it to happen again. We
Right.
have to be careful. I know the IDF doesn't want to kill our own people. That's for sure.
Yeah. And
But it
and
can
of
happen by
course,
mistake, like it did before, and we have to avoid it. And the only way to get them out, because all these tunnels are booby trapped, the only way to get them out is with a deal.
with the deal.
So
And
that's
as a
what we are trying to
reporter,
press the administration.
and as a reporter, I have to tell you that you call it rethinking, and I'm just trying to translate it into news, and I'm like thinking, is the rethinking will include some sort of a new push or maybe a new maneuvering with respect the way Trump will try to convince Netanyahu to do something. I mean, and this is not it's just a comment, because we are looking for more than just rethinking. We are looking for action. This is what we hope.
Tal, it's not our role. Um, the United States has took this role of being the biggest, strongest mediator, and they need to make sure to put the pressure where it's needed to get this done.
Mhm.
So we urge them and we plead with them, please do whatever is needed to get this deal done.
But again, it's all about the overall strategic interest of United States first and foremost. And in that regard, the hostages should come back because that could lead to the next steps in normalization and the Abraham Accords in the region.
Right. So you are the parents of Omer, lovely Omer, and you waited for him for 421 days. And then came the knock at your door, telling you something that obviously you were hoping to hear otherwise, but telling you he had fallen in battle, protecting the country. And this took place in the first few hours of the attack. Can you tell us about that moment, or what do you think you can share with us about your you know grief and process?
So, just to start, some of the listeners, viewers maybe don't know Omer, right? Like we started, Ronan mentioned that we live in New York. We're both Israeli Americans. I was born here. He was born in Israel. And we moved here from Israel in 1999. And Omer was born in 2001, a month after 9/11, in New York City. And we clearly, remember that day as if it was yesterday. I was working in the city at the time, and I was very pregnant with Omer, and I had to get myself out of the city with no public transportation, walked over the Queensboro Bridge, and Ronen picked me up on the other side. And my only goal and aim was to get my baby, which was not born yet, into safety. And at the time, we were in complete, utter shock, right? We perceived New York to be the safest place. And obviously that proved the opposite, that this is one world and we're all affected by terrorism. And I couldn't even protect Omer. He was affected by the biggest terrorist attack on Israel ever. So, the it's just tough to think about it. Um, After that, we moved to Long Island. We raised our kids on Long Island. Omer has a brother, and they grew up in Plainview, which is a very warm community here. A lot of Jewish community, very warm, and with a lot of love of Israel. They both went to Schechter School of Long Island, Jewish education, very Zionistic, and regular kids for the most part. Loved sports, loved rough and tumble, basketball, volleyball. He wanted to play football. That was the only thing I didn't let him do. But he found other ways to rough and tumble. And
And he was highly engaged in youth movements with in leadership roles. Amazing for such a young age. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he was very strong-willed. He knew who he was, and as he moved into high school, he found this strength within him, that drew other kids to him, and he used it in a very positive way. He took different roles. He was very involved in USY, which is the conservative movement youth group in the area, and he kept taking roles. He felt like he was the Israeli among the Americans, and he had he had to introduce Israel and share her. He used to call Israel my girlfriend. Let me talk about my true love, and talk about Israel and share that part of his identity with the teens. And he kept taking more and more roles. And by the end of high school, in his senior year, he was the president of USY in the New York metro area. And that meant that many, many kids got to know him from all over the United States. And when, things happened on October 7th, there was such an outpour of concern and following here from this side of the ocean as well.
And then he went on a gap year in Kibbutz Kfar Anasi in the northern area of Israel, and then joined the military, the IDF, and obviously eventually with such a leadership, capabilities, he went to become an officer in back, I think it was 2022, I believe.
Yeah,
2023.
it was actually a process, right? He didn't think he's gonna draft to the IDF up front. He was actually registered to University of Binghamton, upstate New York. We thought he's going for 1 year. He went to a gap year. You're right. It's a mechina. It's a program of Israelis, and Mechinat Galil Elyon in Kibbutz Kfar Anasi, and he really fell in love with the kids. He really fell in love with the country. We are both coming from Holocaust survivor families. My grandfather and Orna's grandfather saved our parents, our fathers, through the war. And really, Omer grew up with the notion that Israel must be strong. And when he met all the kids around him in the Mechina program, he started to build a conflict that he started to think, how can I go back to New York to my comfortable life, drink beer with my friends in Binghamton University, while my friends here in Israel are all having to draft to the army. Everybody has to go. And he read his calling, and he said, I can't go back. I have to join the IDF and do like all the other Israeli kids do. What you're seeing is actually when he finished the officers course, we were very proud of him. Most lone soldiers like Omer became, those are soldiers that are, don't have their parents next to them or their close family, and they have to manage on their own. We were still living in New York, and most of them do the 2 years and 8 months, and then move on with their life. Omer decided after he finishes full time to go to the officers course. That's not very typical, and
Right.
he just shows his commitment and
So
his
that's a
love for the
lengthy
country.
service. That's many years of service. It's not easy to just continue more and more.
And I think what he showed also during his army time, his leadership skills, his love for people, his love for his soldiers, and he immediately was identified as a leader, and later on as a trainer, being very good with people. They asked him to stay and train other tank commanders. He became a tank commander very quickly, but
Quickly.
they asked him to stay and train other tank commanders, and because it was so good with people and with showing them the way. We even didn't know he was so technical, because the tank is a very technical area, and he was very good with his soldiers. And then they asked him to go in an officer's course, and when he came back, they asked him to be a trainer of other officers, and that's where Omer said, "No, I want to do what I learn and what I'm preaching and what I'm teaching,
Being
which
with the
is
soldiers.
be on the front line."
Yes, being with the soldiers, treating them like his own kids sometimes. Yeah.
That's right. And Omer was stationed just between Kibbutz Nirim and Kibbutz Nir Oz on the
Mhm.
Gaza border, in a small post called the White House, Abayit Lavan.
Right.
And he was the officer in charge of this small post. This small post consists of 2 tanks and a small group of Golani soldiers. Among them, by the way, Idan Alexander, that came very late, or maybe 2 weeks before the war started.
Yeah.
And he was one of the soldiers that obviously Omer knew. Both Omer, more veteran soldier, and Idan, relatively newer. But both of them are lone soldiers that the parents live remotely. And on October 6th, he called us, like he tried to be in touch with us every day if he could, and he spoke to Orna.
He felt, they were told this was at the end of a very intense month. The
Yeah.
Jewish holidays, there was many riots on the border. They worked really, really hard, and actually things had calmed down. And they were told that it's expected to be a quiet Shabbat, and he was looking to do some team building with his team. And unfortunately, we know that it was the exact opposite. As
Yes.
we were about to go to sleep, it was Friday night here in New York. We saw that Israel was experiencing an insane attack, that there
Sirens.
were thousands of missiles being shot at Israel. And Omer and his team, like every day, were already in their tanks at that point. And they were directed to head towards the border, but they had no clue what was expected. And they met with hundreds of terrorists. Their tank was hit with an RPG, and their tank driver was killed on the spot. And unfortunately, it was put on fire with explosives. And Omer didn't answer us. We immediately called him. We didn't know what was going on. We immediately called him, and we never heard back from him since.
Mhm.
And a couple of hours later, maybe a day later, we learned about a Hamas video that was circulated that day, a propaganda video where they were showing how they put that tank on fire and took out the team. And from that video, we couldn't know what Omer's condition was, and the army believed that he was taken alive. And
Absurd.
like you said before, for 421 days, can you imagine that? 14 months, we fought for him, thinking that he was alive, hoping that we would be able to save him and rescue him and bring him back. And on day 421, there was some new intelligence that came in that showed that he was probably, due to the attack, he was actually killed on that day.
He was probably badly hurt, taken alive into the tunnels, and probably died the same day without any medical condition, any
Attention.
attention that he got, nothing.
Yeah.
And he probably died there. I also want to say that we heard the recording of the tank and how Omer, in a very heroic way, was calling for rescue once his driver got hit and was badly wounded, maybe dead at that point. He was continuing to call for assistance that never showed up, and telling his teammates to breathe fresh air from the air conditioning system that was still bringing fresh air while he was not taking fresh air. He was calling and calling and calling for rescue. And those two team members came out on their feet, alive.
Yeah.
Later, we learned that Oz Daniel was murdered as he was fighting with these captures,
With the
while-
terrorists.
with the terrorists, while Nimrod Cohen was taken alive.
And he's still considered
It
to
is
be
still
alive.
alive, is being held captive, and he was his driver, right?
No, he was not the driver.
Shaked Dahan was the driver, and he was killed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was inside with Omer in the tank, and he
Yes.
was dragged out, and
And
we
Nimrod is alive and must come home and
Yes.
survived 660 days. And we want to meet him and we want to hear his story and how everything unfolded in the tank, obviously. But he needs to come home alive. If he managed to survive that long, how
It's important
crazy
to
would
know-
it be if something would happen to him now because of an IDF, maneuver in the area? It's
So
so
it's
risky.
important to note we interviewed Vicky Cohen, Nimrod's mom, in the same podcast here 2 weeks ago. So you listeners, you can go back to this episode and listen to Nimrod's mom. He just turned 20 years old about 2 weeks ago. The kid is alive and is being held captive as far as we know, back into, I think, March or something. He was alive, and we are, hoping for his safe return. I want to go back to Omer, and I heard from you when we spoke before this episode. You told me that President Trump, then just a candidate, back on October 13th, 6 days into the war, already called you. You thought that Omer is alive at the time, and Trump was not the president yet. He was campaigning. This is more than a year
Not
before
even
the
campaigning yet.
Right, he wasn't even campaigning. This
But
was this was a week into the war, and he called us. A mutual acquaintance suggested that he should call us, and we took that call, and first of all, we were very thankful for it, but we also realized that we have to be very careful. That was very, very early on, and we realized that we don't know how long this was gonna last. Obviously, we had no idea it would last this long, but that we had to be careful and keep this issue bipartisan, because it was an election year. And we knew that, if we want to help get Omer home and all the hostages, we need all hands on deck. And we can't have this become a partisan issue and an issue for debate, in an election year. So, we were very cautious that whole year. And we mentioned that to Trump, and he agreed. And as the year continued, it was something that we always insisted upon with anything that we did, with any place that we spoke, that this is not a partisan issue, it's a humanitarian issue, and we need everyone involved.
So just as we speak right now, President Trump is actually speaking, and someone is texting me, and he says, I'm quoting from things he said just now. He says, we need to get all of the hostages now. There's 20 alive, maybe even 21, we don't know that for sure. And many parents that want to see both live and killed, hostages back home. And he says, Israel has to make, make some difficult decisions about Gaza. So, he's on board, and it's interesting. I've heard him at one of these instances, probably after he met you, he started to explain to the camera how important it is to get hostages who we know for sure that were killed. Can you?
That's right.
Tell us about this.
He actually called us while we were sitting Shiva here in New York. We get a phone call. We are told this is President Trump who wants to speak to you. At the time, it was not inaugurated yet. It was beginning of December 2024. That's when we got notified that Omer is probably not alive. And we decided to sit Shiva partially here in New York and partially in Israel. So we split the Shiva. And thousands of people came to pay their respect. It was really unbelievable. People flew from Chicago, from Atlanta, from Boston, just to stand in line in the cold and tell us that they're so sorry for us. And
to Plainview,
New York, on Long Island, just to be part of the grief. But President Trump, when he called us and he said, I'm so sorry for your loss, we told him, President Trump, yes, we are told that our son is no longer alive, but he fought for Israel. He did the right thing. He moved to Israel as the most Zionistic Jewish thing, fought for Israel. We can't bear the fact that Omer will not be brought to rest, and we will not have a grave. Mr. President, he deserves a grave in Israel, and we deserve a place to mourn. And he was so impressed from that since that day, he started to repeat it. And he almost said something like, there are parents that want their dead children more than their living children. We never said that. We want them just the same. The fact that Omer is not alive doesn't mean we don't deserve to get him back.
And because some of the people, 30 families in saying this, right? There are 30 families that crave closure, that the only thing they know about their loved ones comes from some kind of image or intelligence, piece of intelligence, nothing real. You really have a hard time accepting it, grasping it. You can't really move forward. We're still stuck. We're still stuck in this. We're still fighting for him.
Plus, something that I think President Trump maybe did not realize at first is for the Jewish halacha, the importance of the burial process. And you said Shiva, but
I think you're right. I think we understood that there is some cultural differences. There is the Jewish tradition, but there's also the Israel narrative that we don't leave anybody behind.
Exactly.
And for that matter, there is still a deceased hostage, Golden,
Hidalgo.
Adar Golden, that has been in captivity in Gaza for close to 11 years or over 10 and a half years. We met his parents. We know he must come. And we know that Steve Witkoff is insisting on to get him back as part of the deal. And rightly so. We can't leave anybody behind. And each family must get their closure. And we are calling on getting all the hostages back. The living are in dire condition and have really every minute could be very detrimental to their well-being. They could die any minute, but the deceased can disappear, and that's our biggest fear, that the deceased under the rebels may never be found, and the captured or the people that put them somewhere are no longer alive.
Right.
So this is urgent. It's urgent all across, and this is why we're calling for a one deal to bring everybody back. And we've been calling it for a long while now. And
So
what
yeah,
you're seeing
so
are
yet,
images of some of our advocacy in Washington and around the world.
so yet again, I'm talking to our listeners and viewers. We interviewed here Adar Golden's brother for the occasion of the 4,000 days that Hadar, who was also an officer in the military in Givati Brigade, for the 4,000 days that he's being held. He's the oldest, the longest held captive. There is a humanitarian aspect and humanitarian claim against the UN and against obviously the terror organization for holding her body for such a lengthy time as a negotiation chip. It's horrible. And so you may also listen to that episode if you want to listen to his brother about Adar captivity. We'll go back to yourself and your advocacy. You appeared also in the GOP convention exactly a year ago, I think in July, maybe July or August of before the election of 2024. So how did that feel? I mean, you explained earlier, you had to walk a tightrope between the two administrations, but yet, I mean, I watched your speech at the convention. Obviously, I was not there. I watched it online, but I mean, it was heavily quoted here in Israel in a very important moment, and you got huge support from both sides of the aisle. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very powerful experience for us. We didn't know what to expect. It was a very political conference, right? We're talking about an election, and we came in and we were talking about the hostages. We were not going into politics, and so there was some concern about how we would be received, and we received in an amazing way. And I think it was the first time also for the Israeli people to feel the love and not just all the the difficulty throughout this year. And the audience was so receptive. As we walked onto the stage, they welcomed us, with bring them home chants.
Right.
And the whole experience was very,
I mean,
that was also the first time the president mentioned the hostages, and that was critical. He from the stage of the RNC, he said, that it would not be acceptable for Hamas to be holding hostages once he went into office. And we saw that, we saw his commitment really from that point on to our issue, which was extremely important.
Right.
What we're seeing right now are images from the inauguration parade. This is from this past January. This just continued, to show how focused the president is on the issue of the hostages. We invited all our families to be on the stage with him, and he's really showed leadership and support of our cause.
And right there on the right side of the photo, we see you at the center. We see you from the back. You're talking to the president. And then if you look, on the right-hand side of the photo, I can see, I think this is Yael Alexander, the mother of Idan Alexander, who at the time was still being held captive alive in the tunnels.
That's true.
I'm mentioning that because, as you said earlier, Omer was the ground commander, the area commander of Idan on that morning, on that horrible morning. But I suppose there was a special bond between your two families during this really hard time. And
Without a doubt. You could imagine that we went to Washington together with Idan's parents and many other families um, dozens of times. I think we've been in Washington close to 40 times by now.
wow.
And, uh, and we were very thrilled to see Idan coming out. He was the last American hostage considered to be alive, and President Trump insisted it will come out. There are still two American hostages that are kept. Both of them are considered deceased, Itai Chen and Omer, and we know that they are very committed to bring all the hostages back, among them the two Americans, and we are trusting the Trump administration that they would do everything in their power now to put pressure on Qatar, on Egypt, and yes, on our friends of Israel, um, and Israel itself to reach a deal with Hamas
Mhm.
and bend the hand of Hamas into a deal. Hamas are the bad guys, without a doubt, and Hamas should not stay in power. But the hostages are in dire condition and may die, and the deceased hostage may disappear. That's our fear, and this is why it's urgent.
It's the top priority.
And this is why we have to reach a deal to bring them back. And we know that President Trump is very committed. We know that Secretary Rubio is very committed. And we are asking them to put all the pressure now on all the parties to close this and bring an end to this catastrophe in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas.
And as you said earlier, it may pave the way for developments in the region. You need to get that done first because there is no end to Hamas as long as people are alive in the tunnels. Um, can you tell me? You have a very supportive community in your hometown, as I understand, and there was also a street named after Omer. Can you tell me about that and the support you get on those rallies on a Sunday, right? Sundays rallies.
Yep. We
So
have
there's
an
an
amazing community.
Captain Omer way.
Yes, I mean we have an amazing community. Both are from the school that the kids went to, and the Plainview community, and our synagogue, Midway Jewish Center, with the leadership of Rabbi Joel Levinson, who's been an amazing leader on behalf of the hostages, and the leadership of the county and the town that we live in, Plainview in Nassau County, really. So supportive of the Jewish community and of us personally, and wanting to do everything to support us, to support the cause, to release the hostages, and to make sure that Omer is never forgotten. And the legislators for our town and for our district decided that they wanted to rename the street in front of the JCC and call it Captain Omer Neutra Way. And that was a very emotional experience for us. You know, we're still fighting to bring Omer home. It's very difficult for us to think about how we want to, as a family, remember him and what we want to do to honor his legacy. And they're doing this for us, and they're actually renaming a park in our neighborhood in September, on September 21st, here in Plainview, in honor
Oh,
of
wow.
and it's really we're at a loss of words.
It's a very emotional for us because that's the park where we taught Omer and Daniel, our son, how to ride a bike, how to dribble a ball. That's where Omer learned how to play basketball and became such a good, passionate basketball player. And he always adopted the number 24 because of Kobe Bryant that he admired, and he was really broken when Kobe died with a helicopter crash. But they're gonna have the number 24 on the field, on the basketball hoops, and it's really touching to see how the city, how the county is trying to remember Omer. Although we are really all in the fight to get Omer and all the hostages back. But it's impressive to see the amount of support that we get locally here, and we don't take it for granted.
Not at all.
Very, very touching. I'm, my heart goes out to you. I mean, I'm sitting here in Israel. The kid did not have to come all the way here. So, um, many of our listeners are always asking, if they are outside of Israel, and how can they, you're sitting in DC or California or Canada, and they're listening to us and they're asking, what can a person do when he's outside of Israel in order to make an impact on that issue. So what is your advice, or what do you think? How can
Yeah,
people do
so
more than just listen to us and share it online? What can they do?
it's a good question. We've been asked this question many times. Well, first of all, you can call your local representative, and it's important that the administration will hear from the local representatives in Congress, in Senate, that they have to do everything in their power to support Israel and to bring on the hostages home. That's one immediate thing everybody can do. Another, you mentioned earlier, join a local chapter of Run for Their Lives, um, and just walk with us. We walk here, we walk in different communities, including New York City, in Central Park. There's so many places all around, including the wonderful community in Boulder, Colorado, that was, as we all know, got hurt from a terrorist attack, and we need to support them, and they support us, and we simply admire all the people that walk with us and say this is a humanitarian issue. It's not about a political support this or another. It's about telling the world we can't forget our people behind, and we need to take them out. So that's another important way to show support and be part of us.
We have an Instagram page, Bring Omer Home, where we share some of the things that we're doing in advocacy of the hostages and about Omer. Follow us, reshare. We're also on Twitter and on Facebook. And we also want to mention the Hostage Forum. This webinar is hosted by the Hostage Forum, and they've been our home and our family, for all the families in the past 22 months. And they also need support. So just to reinforce what you mentioned in the beginning, Tal, if you want to make a donation to the Hostage Forum, that helps us too. And it helps us continue the advocacy and keeping the issue alive and front and center until they all come back.
So right before we wrap this up, so I'm going to put some reminders. So you can scan the barcode that is now showing up on your screen. And if you are unsuccessful in scanning that, you can just go into the Hostages and Missing Family Forum. It's a website, it's a big website, and look for the donation page. So help the forum. Obviously, I'm just volunteering. Don't think that I have any type of I'm a reporter. I'm just doing this, as a volunteering, and we are all in Israel. Do whatever we can to support this cause. It's not political. It's bipartisan. They have huge support in Israel, huge support in the United States, and it's important to help them keep rolling, sending the families overseas to meet with prime ministers and president, of course. But you can also join a rally in your area. You're visiting the Run for Their Lives website to find events near you. Of course, you can share this podcast. You can just share it online, or just send it in your email to friends, families, followers, colleagues, whoever want to listen. There's several prior episodes. We started this about a little bit more than a month ago, and we will have another episode coming next Sunday. So every Sunday, and you don't have to listen to this live. You can listen to this later on in the day, in your day. I know Sundays are busy, and always keep the hostages in your thoughts and conversations, and every awareness matter. So I think in together we can put more pressure and work together to get this episode, let's get this event done, and bring Omer home. So
Tal, we wanna also mention other communities. We spoke about our local community and different chapters. run for their lives, but there are so many communities that are outside the Jewish community that have been so supportive of us with their prayers, with their advocacy, with health, whether it's the Christian evangelical community or other communities. We see them. They come to rallies. They invite us to speak at their conferences. And it's so important and it's so vital that we work together and that we remember, like you said, that this is a humanitarian issue.
Exactly.
And we want a better world. We need to work together to make sure that that happens.
Just want to add to what, it's really important what you're saying. I just want to add, people that are Muslims were kidnapped as well on that day. And there is one Muslim soldier still being held captive. I mean, he was killed and then his body was snatched and he's still being held. He's one of the 50 hostages. So, and on October 7th, those terrorists, they didn't care. They just took everybody, Bedouins, Muslims, and the Jewish people. So we were in it together, and we need to, cross communities, cooperations with evangelicals and Christians. It's very, very important that we do this together. So thank you for adding.
Exactly, Tal. And we met so many wonderful people, leaders both in the Jewish world and in the Christian world and even in the Muslim world, that are supporting us, that understand this is a huge pain in the Israeli society. It's an open wound. And the strength of Israel is not just driven by the number of tanks and airplanes that it has, but also by the resilience of its people. So this pain and this wound must be healed. And the only way to heal it is by getting the hostages back. And we are so thankful for all those leaders' support.
To heal the region, really, to heal the region, not just Israeli society, but anyone who is concerned about, the people of Gaza and Israel and the whole region, really, are being held captive by Hamas and need to be let go. This needs to come to an end, finally.
Right. Ronen and Ora, I want to thank you for what you're doing, for your family, for your help protecting this country, and let's hope for an end to that.
Thank you very much, Tal, and thank you everyone who joined and who follows and who supports, and for all the prayers. I see so many people writing that they keep praying for us, and that is very meaningful. And we need to stick together and get this done so that we can all move forward and heal and rebuild.
Thank you. And thank you for the viewers and listeners. We'll meet you here next week on Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Not some, not half, all of them. Now, bring them all. Achieve peace.